All right, 5 minutes today on what is my deepest desire. This came up because this morning I was doing a meditation on YouTube with Deepak Chopra. It's a gratitude meditation, but in that meditation, he asks the listener to ask ourselves, what is our deepest desire? And then allow something to kind of come up in us. And I noticed for me right away, the thing that came up with was community and being a part of a community, having a community. And that seems to be related to being around people, having friends in my life that I spend time with and spend time around. And I realize how important that is for me and how a lot of the things that I've done are connected in some way to that desire, that need for myself. And it makes a lot of sense because something that has come up in conversations or that I've even spent time just kind of like contemplating, thinking about is the fact that the way I grew up in a military family that moved around constantly meant that I never really felt secure in a community or felt like I really had a community most of the time. You know, for example, growing up, childhood, I mean, my family, my parents, we were almost never around our extended family. So I never really knew my grandparents. I never really spent any time with any aunts or uncles on either side. It's not that I never met them. I've met a lot of, extended family, but never spent any real time around them. I don't know any of these people. I have no stories not of spending time. And it's not, I don't feel any resentment. I don't feel any lack or actual sense of missing out on anything because of that. It's just, that's just the way it was. That was the experience. But, I see how that might, on a subconscious level, connect to a need in me now to have something that was mostly missing in my life growing up. Especially this idea of like having friends and, having people around me. I mean, that also seems like something that was mostly missing in the experiences that I observed in my family. Like, for example, my parents, my mom and my dad, I couldn't tell you any of their friends. I don't even know if they have any friends or, I'm assuming they do, but growing up, I don't remember any friendships, like strong friendships of my own parents, like, who they hung out with or whatever. I mean, I'm assuming that they did have friends and, have friends still, but I don't know any of them. I've never met any friends of theirs. And while that doesn't matter, I mean, I don't feel like, my parents need to have friends necessarily, but I see how that maybe influenced me a little bit, or, my sense of friendship, my understanding of friendship maybe isn't as developed or strong as other people's. Only because I know people who will talk about, their parents' friends and what their parents do and their communities, and it sounds like much more robust than anything I've ever experienced in my own life. And I'm basically connecting a lot of the threads to that. Like, all right, things make sense. Every 2 to 3 years, our family moved to a completely new place. I had to make new friends. These friends never really mostly evolved into deep friendships. And if they did start to move into that realm, it was time to move again. And so it was this like constant starting over, never really being firmly planted in any specific community or friendship groups with deep, intimate connections. It's mostly been missing, most of my life. It's not until I've moved to Taiwan, Taipei, and now that I've been in one place for 15 years, which is the longest I've ever lived in any one place. I've never lived anywhere else longer than this. So, that's why, Taiwan, Taipei is my home. That has the home feeling, because I have been able to make friends here that I've known for 10 or more years in some cases, and develop more intimate friendships with people, and in some ways have felt like I was part of a community or communities at different times here in Taipei only. But even that sometimes feels fragile, when you live when you're an expat, or, like an immigrant essentially to a different country. The other friends that I have, there's also a revolving door of sorts. Like, people come here, they leave, come and go, or, maybe I'd make a friend and that friend would only be here for a year. And most of the other, foreigners that I know have a similar experience as well, especially if you've been here for a long time. So yeah, that's something interesting for me to observe, this like deep desire for community, deep desire for strong friendships that has mostly been missing from my life, and this kind of like perpetual desire for that. And even sometimes I think that I might have more of that than I think, but maybe because of the way I grew up, there's always this sense of lack, of lack, and what's the word? Like instability, or the sense of things being temporary, that, at any time, any year, all of that could disappear. Because that was my experience growing up, that friends appear, but that they always disappear. We arrive in a place, but we're always going to leave. And so everything is completely impermanent. There is no stability. There is no foundation. There is no establishing, becoming a real part of any community. It's all just, a place that we visit and then go away from. And, now as an adult, I see how that's become a desire of mine, this kind of like craving for that thing that I haven't experienced as fully as maybe my childhood self always wanted, but wasn't able to articulate or express. So that's been a real interesting thing for me to think about this morning, and that's my share. So happy Wednesday.